This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Our goal with our videos is to empower you to be able to do the repairs on your own and save a whole lot of money and also get that great feeling of having fixed it by yourself. This is Scott the Fix-It Guy, and today we have an electric dryer that isn't heating. This is a Maytag, an older one, and we're going to be checking a few things. First, we're going to check out to make sure that it has voltage. So we're going to set the multi-tester for AC voltage, and we're going to check to make sure that there's 110 volts between these two terminals and then 110 on the bottom. And if we put these two side terminals, we test those, we should get 220 volts. And we do, so we know that there is voltage coming into the dryer. So probably it's a thermal fuse that has blown, usually because the vent tube gets clogged. So it's pretty easy to change the thermal fuse. We're going to use a paint scraper. We got the machine unplugged. We use a paint scraper to push in on these two spring tabs on the front, and then we can just hinge the whole top up, and you have direct access to the heating element, to the thermostat, and to the thermal fuse. They're located there in the back. And we're going to set our meter for testing continuity, and we're going to put the two probes on the outside terminals on the thermostat, which is the big round thing here directly in front of us with the blue label, and it shows that it does have continuity, so we know the thermostat's okay. And we're going to now test the element by putting the probes on the two terminals on the element, and it shows it does have continuity, so we know the element's good. So the thermal fuse is located down a little lower, about 2 inches down here, and we're going to put the probes on those two terminals on the thermal fuse. And we didn't get a continuity, we didn't hear any beep, we didn't see any reading. So we know that that has blown, usually because it got overheated, which is usually due to a clogged vent tube. So all we have to do really is just change that thermal fuse, but usually it's good also to change the thermostat, because sometimes the thermostat can cause the other one to blow. So here is the link, the part number from Amazon. It comes with 2 different types of thermal fuses and a new thermostat. Here's the kit. So we're going to open that up, take those parts out, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drive to remove this bracket that's holding on the thermal fuse. It's also holding on the element. So this is also the way you can remove the element. It's just one long screw. Pull that out, and then we'll be able to lift up on the bracket that's holding in the thermal fuse. So I'm just using my fingers to finish the spinning that off, and then I can get that screw out of there. And I want to push up on the bracket over here by my right index finger. This one's kind of stuck, so I'm going to use a standard head screwdriver to kind of push up on it to get it to loosen up. Let's get that screw out of there. We're also removing the thermostat. It has a bracket that holds it in and a couple of little screws that hold it on. So we get that old thermostat out of there, and we've got to take off the wires that are connected to it. So now I'm going to take out the old thermostat, get the bracket, and I'll go ahead and put on the new thermostat. And then I'll add the 2 little screws that hold it in, and then I'll put it back in position. So if these thermostats fail, it'll let the dryer get too hot, and then it could blow the thermal fuse. That's why the kit gives you a new thermostat and a new thermal fuse. Although in my experience, usually the reason they blow is because of a clogged vent tube. So here's that bracket that's holding on the thermal fuse. It's kind of stuck. So I'll use something like a standard head screwdriver to push up on it to kind of break it loose, and then it should just lift up by about 1/4 inch, and then you should be able to get the bracket out of there. And then with the bracket comes the thermal fuse and the wires. So here comes the bracket and the old thermal fuse, and now I'll just use these pliers to help me pull the spade connectors off. Usually they're on there pretty tight. Now we've got the new one ready to go. Get the wires on there tight. And we're going to feed that back in, and the way you do that is it's not much room to work, but you're going to push it against that metal wall to your left, and then once it's in position you're going to push down on the whole bracket by about 1/4 inch, and it has slots that are going to fit right in to hold it, but to secure it you need to put that big long screw back in. That's what's holding in the element, and it also is holding in the bracket that holds on to the thermal fuse. So you have to kind of line up the top of that bracket with the hole that the screw goes into, and then you use your 1/4 inch driver to drive it in. It's a long screw because it's securing the element at the top, and also goes down by about 1.5 inches to secure the bracket that's holding onto the thermal fuse. Pretty cool design, just a little hard to work in here because there's not much room. So we got that back in, and now we're going to go ahead and put the bracket for the thermostat back into position. This will just give you a look. You can see in there, so that thermal fuse is in position and ready to go. So I've worked on this model about 4 times, and each time that it stopped heating it was because of that little thermal fuse down there. So now I'm just using the pliers to pull the terminals off of that old thermostat, and then I can put the new thermostat into position. The bracket, it's held on by one little screw, and then I can add the terminals back on, and we should be good to go. These are pretty tough dryers. Very rarely do these elements break, like the big spring that heats up. Usually it's this little thermal fuse that blows because it just gets too hot. Pretty easy to clean your dryer vent tube. You just need a special tool called a lint eater tool to do it. Putting these wires back into position. And then I'll go ahead and close the top, and we'll give it a test, make sure it's working. So pretty cool. It just hinges down. You line up some little pins there in the front, and then push down, and the spring clips will lock it into position. There we go. Alright, now as I put it back in, I'm going to lift up a little bit on this vent tube so the vent tube does not get pinched or crunched. I want to have a really good volume so the air can easily leave the house and help it dry and not get overheated. So it looks good, everything's turning correctly, it's heating up correctly. Here's the model number for this machine. And gonna make sure this is clean, looks good. So if you don't have that thermal fuse, something that sometimes works is to bang these thermal fuse. Sometimes it will let them reset. I'm just testing it now. I have no continuity. This doesn't always work, probably 50% of the time. What I do is I grab the thermal fuse with a pair of pliers and I smack it down on the concrete. If you don't have concrete, you can just smack it down on something metal. I'm going to use this little hammer, the metal part of this hammer. So we smack it down and then we test it, but this one didn't work. About 50% of the time it does work. It's better to use a brand new part though. So thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance.